You join us now as we're about to delve into our opening semi-final of the tournament. Rapha is ready as our first competitor. He will be coming out on stage, preparing himself to see if he can walk away as victor in our opening best-of-5 semi-final versus Vengeurr, who really has been going from strength to strength over the course of the Quake Pro League. A clash of two very different players, Ryan, in the way they're going to be facing off here. Who are you excited the most to see on the server?
I mean, is both of them an acceptable answer?
Absolutely.
That's the question I want to ask, because Rapha, he's been really gunning for a Quake Pro League win since it began. We've said this yesterday, that there was a time in Quake Champions where he was nearly untouchable. And in Pro League, it's just been more so just the rise of players that are all championship level, able to top a tournament. And that's been the exciting thing about Quake Champions in general in the Pro League, is that lands are unpredictable. When you think about players who you think will win and who do you predict, there's at least like 5 players that you can think of on the top of your head that totally could do it. And there's even more than that. But this match in particular, Rapha has gone in today looking in slightly more consistently good form. I think he's probably the safe bet just purely by what we've seen already. However, Vengeurr is looking comfortable also. Had a chat with him behind the scenes during some of the other matches, and it's definitely something he's confident about. It's more about him trying to make sure that he makes no mistakes, because if he doesn't, I think he's confident he can take it.
Oh, absolutely. And I love that you mentioned a clash between different players, and I think that's perfectly reflected in their soundtracks as well. If you listen to Rapha, that epic hardcore theme, and then Vengeurr comes up like basically like he's out clubbing, right? It's flamboyant, it's youthful, it's just bringing it and living it up.
Isn't he only just old enough to go clubbing though?
Pretty much so, yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Two very different players.
Whippersnappers.
Very different players, very different styles. One very disciplined, of course, Rapha on the one hand, and then Vengeurr. He's an innovator. He has the flashy plays, the amazing aim. So very interesting matchup ahead of us.
Oh yeah. Well, let's try and make it a bit more interesting by looking into the statistics. We have the picks and bans, so we can see how that is potentially going to swing things. Well, actually,
check out
that bracket, Ryan, as this is what we've got available. Obviously, you can see what's going on down in the lower bracket here with how it's situated. Cypher getting knocked out of the tournament 2-1 by Base.
And Chain has been on... Chain has actually been on quite a tear himself. Dahang, we did just see him fall in the upper bracket to Vengeurr. Chain able to defeat Dahang in this bracket means that Chain has taken out Cooler and then Dahang in his tournament row. This has been quite the tournament for him so far.
The man's on an absolute tear. I think this is the best result he's ever delivered in the Quake Pro League. And then if we look at the very bottom of the lower bracket, the results aren't final yet, but Cygep managed to win one map over Toxic already.
Quake God Revenge.
Absolutely. Is the Terminator in a bad spot? Might he be going out before he even makes it back up to the uppers?
I mean, there's potential. There's definitely a chance it could happen, and it's such a shame as well, because you imagine he might be a little bit demoralized based off the way he did actually suffer the loss in that series.
Yeah.
It can be, as a Toxic fan, it can be stressful being a Toxic fan, because you just love, you fall in love with his gameplay, right? And the fact that every ounce of him is like just put into the game, and there's so much personality there. And it's just greatness, right? It's the execution. You just love watching the execution, and he does so many things right all the time, but how many times does it come down to one moment? And in both of those maps, it was one key moment.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, he had it. He could have 2-0'd that series.
A little bit more health in certain engagements, just landing the one rail that he couldn't, or getting out of the way just too late, and that would have been a completely different outcome, absolutely.
Well, we'll see more of Tox going on in the B stream, but for now, let's talk about what's going on here. Our semi-final, we do have the picks and bans between Rapha and Vengeurr.
Oh yeah, that first one is a juicy one, but of course keep in mind that we're now moving into the territory of the best of 5, so it takes a player 3 maps to secure the overall victory, and the first of those maps will be Blood Covenant, an extremely fast lineup I see. Rapha once again bringing out the Athena, whereas Vengeurr is countering with the Nyx.
But you're always prepared for what to expect when you see a lineup like that. The first map being the Blood Covenant, Athena and Nyx, kind of automatically spells that Vengeurr is going to be a little bit more on the side of defense. It's just the nature of her, the Ghost Walk on that map. Vale of Nath Ranger versus Sorlag, Awoken, Galena versus the Strog. Corrupted Keep, we see Rapha go in with the kill. He's not shy of going in with that champion, and he has had great results with it in the past, but it's going up against BJ, and then the Decider, where the champion pool runs quite thin. It's going to be the Death Knight removed for the Scale Bearer versus the Visor.
Yeah, and that's going to be difficult for Vengeurr if it gets to that point. If he gets on the back foot and Rapha managed to get a lead with a few frags even, it's going to be almost impossible to catch him. And then Awoken there in the middle, Rapha bringing out the Strog, probably learned a thing or two from his teammate, the Hang that we discussed earlier, who is the innovator, the one that brought Strog to the mainstream.
Yeah, that is very true. His brother-in-arms and Team Liquid there. Now, best of 5. Semi-final. There's a lot on the line for this to try and see who will be one of our first finalists coming out of it on this side of the bracket. Are you feeling like this is going to be a Liquid liquidation or potentially the Maestro Madness reigning supreme, Ryan?
I mean, I expect it to be close. I strongly do not think it's going to be a 3-0, and if it is, it will just be surprising more than anything, because both of these players, I think they're feeling good, they're playing good, and with that, the nature of that, you can just expect it to be close.
I fully agree. I just think that it's probably towards Rapha in his favor, mainly because Vengeurr's previous performance, impressive, but a little messy. And I think that that might be his downfall here. You cannot make mistakes against Rapha. You just straight up cannot, because once you drop the ball once or twice, things can change so quickly, right? We saw it earlier in his match against Cypher. Cypher missing one jump to the heavy on Blood Run, and that was it. Just like that. So Vengeurr, he has to play an extremely tight game near flawlessly if he wants to one-up Rapha.
Yeah, by no means is this going to be an easy margin for either of our two competitors. They really are going to have to fight tooth and nail. What are your potential keys to victory here then for Vengeurr? If we're saying, like, overall, we're looking at Rapha to be a little bit more on a pedestal, what is the potential for Vengeurr, Ryan?
Vengeurr just needs to minimize his own mistakes. It's more about just making sure that he is playing his best, because how many times have we seen that to beat Rapha, you have to play near perfect. Because he himself, you very rarely see him have a bad game. But it is the style of Rapha where everything he does is so calculated, and he has really, you know, the biggest brain, competitive-wise. His mind works unlike anyone on the planet. It's why he is said to be, right now, the greatest Quake player of all time. The only thing that would have changed that is just the recent Quake Pro League LAN results. It's the only thing that would maybe even change that testament. But across all the Quakes, Rapha just has that track record.
He's always one step ahead. Let's see if he can be here, if he can find the upper hand. It's a semi-final, a best of 5, Rapha versus Vengeurr.
Taking it away on Blood Covenant, our first map of the series. Starting things off on Rapha's point of view, Vengeurr instantly just using that wall jump to get across, make his way over to Heavy. We're gonna see Mega go to Rapha, and immediately a fair bit of a delay. That's 8 seconds between Mega and Heavy. Rapha realizes this too, of course, and if he can get the upper hand now, he's in a pretty good spot to start cycling the items.
And Vengeurr has to be on the side of caution, really. It's all about the fact that Athena, she can be anywhere at any given time thanks to the grappling hook. It doesn't just make her faster, it's the verticality that makes a huge difference. And Vengeurr, he has to be aware of that. You've got to be ready for so many more angles that you would otherwise not expect. But so far, pretty standard. You take one, I take one kind of game going on. The attempt to use the grappling hook to get out unscathed eats a rail anyway, which is good for Vengeurr, because it means that Rapha can't just fling around the map, not necessarily worrying about his stack. Those rails are going to be mandatory.
I love that first engagement from Rapha. So typically him, he shows up, lands one rocket, and just instantly disappears right then and there. But Vengeurr, out of nowhere, you can see the surprise on Rapha's face, a little bit of confusion, looking at him going, why? How did he get that angle still?
I'm not one to read lips, but I'm pretty sure that was a shocked expression into, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that almost looked like a last-minute double jump to me, jumping down and then getting that extra bit of height.
That might have been the only way that he could have gotten such an angle. Yeah, Vengeurr now popping the Ghost Sword, trying to cut Rapha off. Both players trying to back away a little bit. Rapha does escape that sticky situation, and now he knows Vengeurr doesn't have the Ghost Hawk ready for another half a minute or so, and he might be able to capitalize off of this, but the Italian drops down right in front of him. The aim has to be solid. Rapha Very passive and defensive play right there. Decides to the moment that he's out of control and he doesn't feel like he's got a good handle on the situation, he just gets out. The rockets are doing a lot of damage. Both players low, but it's Rapha who lands the first shot. He was expecting the wall jump, I think.
And when Rapha disengaged and went straight to heavy, you could tell that Vengeurr didn't have a complete gauge on where he was. And it is the respect of knowing where Athena can be that he genuinely believed, by the way, a clean pickup. This could be a frag. Vengeurr's going for what looked like a perforation. I think he was so weak there, he kind of had to just go for like the max damage he could. And if you're Nyx and a Ghost Walk, it's hard to hit, but that was the best case. But my point was that Rapha had gone towards the heavy and Vengeurr was looking around at the Mega because what other champion could get up there that quickly? And he was like, well, if you're here, I'll do it. But that time allowed Rapha to get the heavy and set himself up.
Yeah, and Vengeurr, he was just there waiting, looking down, just taking a little bit of a peek, looking at the item, but Rapha was already right in his face. Rockets being exchanged right now. Rapha with the stack advantage. Oh, Vengeurr, he can't even get the small armor. He will reappear right there. This is a good fight for Rapha. The LG doing a whole lot, and the Italian will go down once again. Perhaps a little bit too predictable when he uses the Ghost Walk to escape. And now Rapha, he's got a few seconds left to make his way back over to the Mega. That rail, that's basically going to make it so that Vengeurr can't really contest for this. Yep, indeed, he has to get back out of there.
Oh, Rapha wants more than that. It's not just the item, it's the frag too. And Vengeurr, the danger with this kind of fast-paced action. Hang on a minute. Oh, he tries to set himself up for a bit more SSG damage. Can't hit its mark. My point is that when you use the Ghost Walk and then immediately get deleted, you've got a lightning-fast Rapha with a talented Athena at the helm. You're on the spawn and you have nothing to defend. It is kind of like the balance area of Nyx. But this could be a fight. Hang on a second. This is a bit of a...
Okay.
Well, that took a lot longer than it should have.
It absolutely should have.
Take it.
Because Rapha was on like 20-something health. I think Vengeurr just missed shot after shot after shot. Does manage to get himself the frag. He's got plenty of time to work with. 6 minutes left on the clock, but there's a lot of frags that he has to make up before he can even tie the Professor.
And with Rapha just consistently running this circuit, it's going to be another heavy in and out before any damage can be done. Vengeurr only just really getting access to a rail, so there were no angles to be had. Speaking of angles, Rapha looking for one and hits one almost immediately, and the trade is always going to hurt because he's the one that just took the heavy. Now he's got the Mega. You both hit a rail and he gets a much bigger stack that's only ever going to benefit him.
Yeah, that's that amazing Rapha positional play coming into force. Even when you exchange those rails, it is still the American that manages to get the upper hand just because of where he's situated on the map. He's got a much better angle at some of the items to restock right back up. Vengeurr seems to have a pretty good read on when Rapha's at, though. Here he goes! The swing comes through, and actually Rapha ends up doing most of the damage. Vengeurr waiting on the health bubble, knows exactly where Rapha is, has to dodge the projectiles. And it's once again a lot of damage exchanged by both players, but Rapha has the better escape route, has to come right back up. I think he kind of messed up the hook. Not sure if he wanted to drop down right there, but still maintaining the lead. Once more, though, the Ghost Walk being used just to not die put Vengeurr in a position where he couldn't fight for the Mega at all. The downtime of the invincibility gave Rapha the Mega before he even reappeared, really. And hang on a minute, tries to time the rocket. A little bit shy of it, only 34 damage. That's not really much to write home about. And now we've hit that 5-minute warning. Less than half of this map is left to run. And as long as Rapha is consistently hitting rails like that, Vengeurr's in a position where he realistically can't do much. Yeah, I love that positioning from Rapha to go for the rail. Absolutely not what anyone would have expected, but Rapha instantly extending his lead some more. Vengeurr gets to spawn over at Mega, but he doesn't have anything to work with. He has got to get out or he will fall again. He even goes for the desperation gauntlet, but it won't connect. This is looking like a very tall order for the Italian.
Always a scary position when you're fresh off the spawn and you've got literally no weapon and the only thing you can do for damage is the gauntlet. At that point, that's just a sign that you're not prepared for the fight and that you've been caught in a terrible position, which is only ever going to be favor Rapha, really.
Yep.
Just putting that chokehold on and even getting a rail from that angle. There wasn't much of Nyx on show. Still managed to find a way. And Vengeurr's weak and down. Another free frag. Looking likely that this one's going to be a wrap real soon. 8-2. Tons of work for Vengeurr to do if he wants to win this map. And the problem is the snowball effect keeps on trucking.
I think one of the mistakes that Vengeurr has been making pretty consistently is he uses the Ghost Walk and then he just doesn't get out. He sticks around Rapha and he's within a few meters of him, and then he comes out of Ghost Walk and Rapha just turns on and he's like, oh, there you are. Okay, and you're done. And I think he's dropped 3-4 frags like that already. That's a lot to give up.
You can almost imagine that one of the reasons for that might be that Vengeurr kind of fears the Athena chase down.
Yeah.
There's depending on when he uses the Ghost Walk, even if he reappears, if he has no escape and he's weak, and there's an Athena with a grappling hook ready, we've seen just how out of this world aggressive players can be when they use this, and that's just, yeah, that's a fear invisibility for Vengeurr. Just
nice
have to pull it, get some damage, and it's going to shred down even more, 10-2. By all means, this really should be a wrap. Rapha has just absolutely dismantled this map, and it's a great start for him, and a little bit worrying if you're Vengeurr. I know Vengeurr was talking about earlier on, he just needs to minimize his mistakes, and he's confident he can take it. There have been a couple of mistakes coming through here, though, in the first map, and it's something that he kind of just needs to brush off.
Absolutely. And of course, he's also playing Rapha on Blood Covenant with the Athena. And Rapha's one of the best Athena players in the world.
One of the first.
Especially on this map, one of the first too, of course. And it's very difficult for someone like Vengeurr to be able to deal with it. So hopefully he can put this one into context and just realize that, you know, other maps will definitely suit me better. I will have better matchups in the future. So no need to fear just yet. It is best of 5. Plenty of opportunities to make a comeback happen, but it's still not out for the count just yet. But 2 minutes for 7 frags. This is borderline impossible.
If he gets a frag now and he just all the way forward, he gets a frag, but he's weak as anything. He is in time for the heavy, but even the 3 seconds he had to take there is 3 seconds.
I was thinking the exact same thing. Just having to wait for something like that when there's a minute 30 left on the clock, like that's disastrous. And Rapha now adopting a much slower playstyle is going to just get himself some of the resources that he needs, but will still maintain those exit routes. Here we go, Vengeurr using one of the few things he can do, catching Rapha somewhat by surprise, but unfortunately for him in a bad angle as well. The LG coming out with the rail. Rapha's rails have just been superb, and the rockets too. My goodness. I was talking to him before this matchup, asking him how he was feeling, and he said, you know what? My rockets feel amazing today, and I think that's absolutely true. And his accuracy with the railgun as well. The man's a monster, and he's proving it again.
There's some dangerous weapons to be confident with, that's for sure. This has been pretty one-sided. Those final frags, Vengeurr's just going as aggressive as he can, but yeah, at this stage, it's more thinking about the other maps. Vengeurr has no choice but to kind of roll with the punches in that effect. And we're now going to be going in 30 seconds time, the chance for Vengeurr to redeem just a little bit, or to see if it's even going to be a 2-0, which is something to be a bit concerned about this late in the tournament, with just how good Rapha is looking. These kind of last 20 seconds or so, it's just Vengeurr getting frags on Rapha. If anything, that's just for good morale. Like, hey, look, I fragged him a bunch before the end of the map. Let's just do more of that again in the future ones. But yeah, it's just running the motions here.
I mean, if it works or if it helps, right? Come on, just keeping your aim active, keeping the reflexes primed and ready to go. It's an important part of Quake when you move in between maps. Just make sure that you end it the best you possibly can. Even if you lose by a number of frags, just get that damage in. Make sure that you're still feeling good and confident.
It's one of the reasons that Rapha never lets his foot off the gas at any moment.
Yep.
It could be 30 seconds away and he could be 20 frags to 0 and he still gives it 110% all the time. Just maximum efficiency.
Very true indeed. And then moving on to the next map, probably not going to see as high of a frag count. These light champions, they tend to, you know, they're a little squishier, don't have the same high stack, so they tend to go down a fair bit more often, but still, this is looking a little worrying for Vengeurr.
It does, and it's unfortunate to say that because the first frag that we saw was that really cheeky kind of last-minute double jump into a rail angle that even caught Rapha by surprise. I kind of assumed we'd maybe see a little bit more of that, but ultimately the Ghost Walk didn't serve much purpose here. When someone picks Nyx, she can either be a really one-sided character, kind of either way. When she works wonderfully, but when she doesn't work, you may as well have picked a different champion. Just Rapha, the overwhelming annoying pressure of Athena. And let's not forget that Rapha was one of the original Athena players. He was one of the first that actually brought her out in a competitive setting. He knows how this champion works.
I appreciate, though, that Vengeurr was trying to change things up a bit. You know, he didn't just use the Ghost Hawk the same way over and over again, but he tried to change things up, and sometimes he went with an aggressive Ghost Hawk from far away so that Rapha had no way of seeing him approach or something like that. But overall, I do feel like he made a lot of mistakes using the Ghost Hawk too. Like, what you say is of course true, right? There's a big risk that when you run away, you can be chased down because you're up against someone so fast as the Athena. But on the other hand, it's still better to take those kinds of odds than just to stay close to him and just hope that you can delete his huge stack advantage in like a second or two before he lands even one shotgun bolt onto you. So definitely a little unsure about those decisions, but yeah.
I mean, Rapha's just looking good.
Yeah.
And this is exactly what you expect to see. His form all weekend has been top-notch. It is this kind of effect of the stage. Rapha is affected by the stage more than most. The longer he plays, the better he gets. And it's kind of nerve-wracking because that tends to happen on a map-to-map basis, not just series to series. After a result like we saw on Blood Covenant, there is every possibility that Rapha is even going to be able to bring that on this map. But he has the champion for it at the same time. He used to rule Vale of Nath with an iron fist. He was nearly unbeatable on this map.
Oh yeah,
Vengeurr has a lot of work to do.
I still remember just back at Italy 2 years ago, something like that. He was just dominant on it up until the very end when Razy managed to defeat him on his own home turf. I don't know if Vengeurr will be able to do the same, but he will nevertheless try. Now Sorlag, of course, an excellent pick on this map. She won't take any damage from the environmental hazards, right? She can just run on through the acid on the floor, but out comes the orb. This is good from Vengeurr. He needs to find the final bit of damage, and indeed he does. 1-0 for the Italian.
He tries to fight fire with fire in terms of damage. Springs the trap, immediate rocket into a dire orb. It's just burst that is in some ways kind of unmatched, especially against those larger champions where you're guaranteed to get a nice chunk of it. But Rapha with a clean refrag and perfect positioning. This is why Sorlag can be so scary at the same time, is that when she is one of those heavy champions where she can move, on a map like this, if she's fresh off the spawn, she's gonna have a giant stack, and it's more than enough to work with. Rapha, he got fragged there, yeah, sure, but he refragged in like 10 seconds.
Yeah. Absolutely the case. That was not a good engagement for Rapha, though. He was just expecting his opponent to be low enough that he could just take him down with one shotgun bolt, and then two, and then three, and all the while, Vengeurr just kept raining down that LG damage onto him, so lost way too much to be comfortable with, but nevertheless, he's got a pretty good rotation. That self-damage won't help either, has got the Mega to fall back on. Vengeurr definitely outstacked, but Rapha, definitely not a flawless game so far. Out comes the LG though, and that will clear things up. 2-1 Vengeurr. It's extremely important that he prevents this from getting out of control.
He had the same idea with that dire orb, almost exactly the same way he got the first frag, where he waited around that corner. The one difference is that he didn't use the dire orb. I think he was less confident in his stack at the time, and he did unfortunately use it a little bit later to no effect. Fortunately for him though, Acid Spit is down, so if it is fighting that he wants to do with it, he's not going to have to worry about the extra damage that Sorlag's going to bring to the table, and with the fact that Vengeurr has some decent items here. He's got a great stack, and that Mistrail should be a clean punish, unless Rapha can just somehow pull this frag out of nowhere. Vengeurr went from being in a wonderful position in that fight to actually one rail can be all it takes to put him in a terrible position. Heavy has just been snapped up though. Rapha just rails, and he's just using the terrain so wonderfully to avoid return damage.
And this, I mean, Vengeurr's gonna regret that when he looks back at the VODs. I don't think he realized at all how low Rapha was in that situation. Rapha was down to literally 2 points of health. A single bullet of anything would have finished him off. But Vengeurr, he got spit on. He had that toxic going against him, so he just dropped down instantly trying to get a health bubble. And that unfortunately cost him a frag. Heavy is up, Rapha landing some good exit damage, and this is typical Rapha right there. Doesn't want to continue fighting, even though he knows his opponent is hella weak, but instead just backs right up and goes for the mega health because he knows that he can establish better control with a higher stack than the person he's going up against, and that this will work in his favor in the next engagement.
The knowledge of, I'm a heavy champion, so if I just get my regular armor up and you have armor but you're really weak, that is not going to help you anywhere near as much as Mega and my armor will. But yeah.
Good rail from Vengeurr right there, though. Rapha will go down, 88 point of health. Won't matter one bit, the 90 threshold he just quite did not get to. Right now, Vengeurr, he needs some of these items, though, and Rapha, 1-2 rails, and that's probably gonna be it. No, wait!
Wow.
It's actually Vengeurr!
You cannot count out Ranger when he's got a dire roll. There's always the potential. Obviously, this is still, the starting shotgun. Great choice there from Rapha. It's a close quarters map. It's more the fact that Vengeurr was able to steal that away, and because of that refrag, I mean, we remain at a 3-3. Not necessarily about stealing a lead, because he was only going to have that lead for so long. But here we go. Another fight into some good rockets from Rapha. However, the Mega is taken, and the rail to answer back. And at this stage, Vengeurr needs to be very careful. He has no health, and that's what Rapha's looking at. It is the strength of Sorlag. Her starting stack off the spawn is massive, and if you frag her with a little bit of life, she's going to spawn, she's going to bunny hop around, and she'll find you.
Unfortunately for Vengeurr, he kind of got the misread of the spawn because he could have easily taken Rapha on right there. If he had picked up LG and dropped down, that would have been one dead lizard. Rapha does manage to take Mega. It spawns at just the right time. Vengeurr could have capitalized off of that one again, but as we said, all these mistakes, Rapha just loves them, and he makes the best use out of it too.
That was a delicious rail from Rapha too. Beautiful movement that set him up perfectly for it. And Vengeurr, tricky position. There's no dire orb, which means no escape. That's a free frag. There really wasn't anything Vengeurr could do to stop that.
Yeah, Vengeurr is relying very heavily on the burst damage and the combos, right? He's gotten so many frags, doing LG damage and then switching to the rail, and bap, finishing off his opponent just like that. But there's only so much you can do with that consistently. As he's backing away, Mega up in around 15 seconds. Defensive rockets will hold Rapha away for a bit longer. But of course the Lizard, she's sneaking and she wants some of that Mega. Vengeurr is just dropping out, gave up positioning, playing it safe rather than be sorry. He doesn't want to get caught out, even if he can pick up the Mega. He knows that's a bad fight for him today. Drop back down. I think he managed to pick up the railgun too, so he's got all the weapons he needs. Now he just needs to find some opportunities to do unreturned damage. That was an excellent rail. Rapha only barely sticking his head out, and it's actually Vengeurr that steals the heavy. He is getting poisoned though. Can he get on the health bubble? He will. Still really low, but Rapha not looking all that good himself.
That was a wonderful answer from Vengeurr at the same time. Rapha used the acid spit pretty perfectly, actually. He scattered just enough acid in every key location Vengeurr should have used to take the heavy. The one difference is he's Ranger, and he used the dire orb to just pretty much bypass the entire thing. And look, it's given him a really solid base to work with, and now it's Rapha that needs to worry about these rails just a little bit. Vengeurr's looking for some damage, but can't hit the mark. Bad time to get caught by Sorlag. Close range with the rockets in hand. No acid spit was even required. And although Vengeurr did kind of stabilize things a little bit, that was not the way you want things to go. Beautiful rail, and because of no Mega, it's a great outcome for him. There's a little light there, just always going to be a bit of a help, and there's plenty of time to get this happening. But Rapha, his rails have been highly efficient, to the point where it just has to be annoying for Vengeurr.
I mean, both of these players have been heavily reliant on the rails so far, and Vengeurr has been hitting some incredible shots, and I think that that is the only thing that's been really keeping him into the game. That's perhaps too aggressive. Rapha will indeed get the frag. Oh, he was railable too! What a shame. That could have brought it to a one-frag game if only Vengeurr had landed that shot. Rapha railable, he realizes it, he knows, I'm just at 90 HP, so I'm going to be going down if that shot connects. And now Vengeurr again looking for the angle. One more rail will do it. Can he find it? Rockets maybe instead. Rapha so low. Oh! Doesn't get out.
Yeah, get some of that bonus damage at the end. But as we always discuss the stack, Vengeurr survived and restacked. Rapha off the spawn had more stack than Vengeurr did. And it's been playing such a massive part that when Vengeurr's getting a frag, he's able to get basically nothing from it. There is no momentum, there's no control, because after you obtain a frag, you are still kind of living in fear. And right now. Vengeurr is looking for his opening. Actually looks like he might have created one here. Rapha, there's no heavy nearby, so Rapha has to look for other armored options if he wants to, but he's very weak. Hang on, the damage is real. Vengeurr,
no health inside.
Oh no, the acid damage over time. No health to stop the bleeding.
And Rapha, he's got a clean side to pick up rockets, a rail, as well as the heavy. Oh, Vengeurr. Rapha definitely getting the better respawn right there. With just a minute to go, all the pressure is on the Italian player.
And pressure is, I think, the magic word here, because Rapha has looked rock solid from the first map up until the end of the second. And that is something that we were a little bit nervous to see. Rapha, he gets so much better on this stage setting the longer you go, and Vengeurr just not quite able to get that upper hand at any point.
But then again, Rapha's control has been inconsistent too, right? So far in the second part of the map, at least, Vengeurr has been doing a lot to keep him away from some of the major items and to consistently pressure Rapha. But right now, 40 seconds, he just has to start going. Right now, he doesn't have the time. He needs to find a frag, he needs to find it soon, and then he needs to trap Rapha off the spawn instantly as well. There we go, Vengeurr knows exactly where he is. Rapha just baits that out, lands the rail, orb comes through, the spit is just too much, and Vengeurr will melt into the floor as Rapha is just pushing ahead, steaming along. He's gonna get another one just for good measure, and this will be yet another map going to the American.
It's been a dominant performance when Rapha, it's just how he grasps every frag. We talked about this previously in the day, and it's always apparent here. There is the element to it though of course he had a wonderful pick in Sorlag on this map. She's one of the best picks you can possibly have on Vale because of that stack difference, but when Rapha gets fragged, it's rare that he really lets you get much from it. And how many times are we seeing Vengeurr get a frag on Rapha and it's bam, important item, bam, pressure, control, the whole package really. Rapha just doesn't let you take that. There's always that kind of next plan in his mind that means, so he's lost a frag, but there's still something else that he wants to do or can do that is more advantageous than what you could do to him. And this map was a perfect example of that. At no point when Vengeurr actually got a frag, that was a really nice little orb at the end there. Oh yeah. But it was the refrag. Look at every time we see Vengeurr get a frag, Rapha immediately just look at the clock. It's so shortly afterwards that there really wasn't much that came from that besides, you know, who got an item, who has timing perhaps, you know, small victories here and there, but nothing that Rapha didn't have complete control over.
Absolutely not. And also, I just want to take a quick moment for those of you who aren't keeping track of the second screen, that by now, Saigib has managed to knock Tox out of the tournament, winning 2-1.
That's
so
revenge right there.
That is indeed a revenge. The Terminator will be exiting the tournament through the loser's bracket as Saigib continues along, still got a good opportunity ahead of him. So we'll keep you up in the loop of what's going on in the lower bracket as well. That frag was such a shame because Vengeurr cleaned him up so nicely, but then the spit, and you could tell, he turned around, he started looking, but it was Rapha who had just picked up the bubble that he needed to stay alive.
I gotta say, Americas are looking good at this. It's a much better turn of events than we saw at stage 1, and I really think it is just the progress of these players and their grind. Rapha, obviously the champion of the Americas. He is, without question, their star player, and he is bringing it to Vengeurr right now.
I mean, it's one of the things that we said at the very start of the Pro League too, right? Yes, EU tends to overall have more of the better players. This is absolutely true. But that is also in part because they have each other to play against, right? And because they have a lot more tournaments to participate in. But then, by starting the Pro League and by encouraging these top NA players to consistently play and practice and improve over time, you're really creating a breeding ground for some really top players on that side of the world as well. And that's clearly showing. Saigib making waves, Chain absolutely taking out some of the top competitors this tournament, so and he's doing well.
I mean, you just look at the QuakeCon last year, where it really was pretty set in stone that Americas just weren't as hot at it, and then we have stage 1, a little bit better, and now stage 2, which is the best performance yet. Yep. It's just, I mean, the proof is in the pudding as far as I'm concerned. If you're in Vengeurr's shoes now though, there is a lot of pressure here. He said to me earlier, he doesn't really find himself feeling much pressure anymore, and I know that is different to what we saw before. Awoken could be our final map, and we can never forget that Awoken is Vengeurr's playground. This is his bread and butter as far as maps are concerned. So if he's able to get this map, it's just a breath of fresh air. It's a start to snatch that momentum away. you just can't help but be concerned because Rapha, he gets better and better the longer the tournament goes on, and he's just had 2 very solid maps indeed.
And Rapha is also a player with a tremendous amount of stamina when it comes to these kinds of games, right? A lot of players, they start getting burned out after a few matches, but Rapha, he can just keep going and going because he's got so much experience. He's such a disciplined and focused player. So there's a big risk that Vengeurr right now is getting caught up in his own head, can't take it 1 map at a time anymore, and realizes, oh my god, I have to win 3 maps back to back to back against Rapha without dropping a single one, or else I'm dropping to the lower bracket. So this is a very difficult task that he's got ahead of him, whereas Rapha, he only needs 1 more.
Moments away from loading into it. Awoken, this is the potential final map here. It would result in a 3-0 for the boys from Liquid, but Vengeurr, if he has a fighting chance, it's going to be on his star map. And Galena, a wonderful champion for this map at the same time. So many totem placements that can just give you a nice level of almost automatic control. And there is some great LG coming out from Vengeurr. It's pushed Rapha into a early burst of damage, really. Rapha going in with a Strog and Pika. Strog, another champion that can be pretty damn solid on this map. The movement never hurt anybody.
Yeah, Vengeurr trying to trap his opponent a bit, setting up over at LG. He knows that Lightning Gun is a weapon that Rapha still doesn't have. Rapha has the advantage of having his hands on the Railgun, but he doesn't have that LG, the ideal weapon for these medium-range fights, and he's going to try and abuse that. And this is exactly what you see him doing right now. He's just going to stand back far enough that he effectively negates most of the rocket damage that comes out of Rapha and uses that opportunity to claim the Mega for himself.
Now, how long will it be until Vengeurr is able to finally get his hands on a rail? That's what I wonder. It did exist a little bit for this early exchange, and then bam, exactly 1 minute in, and the rail finally gets into his hands. But at the same time, it should mean that Rapha is able to get the final weapon he needs, in this case the LG, and he's in and out from the heavy. But ready for the rocket jump, Vengeurr, no! He had the right idea, but just couldn't finish it, and now he's in. Well, there's no dire orb here. We can't play the cute play anymore. Rapha dives in, but he's very weak.
Yeah.
I know Strog's able to get the small health file thanks to his passive, but he still has a lot of health to catch up on.
Vengeurr does get the refrag, but eats a bad rail just beforehand. Doesn't seem to be able to really do much with the totem so far either. If he goes down, which is looking likely, the silver lining at least is that he managed to deny the heavy to Rapha. So that at least gives him an in to the next rotation of items if he can get himself nice and stacked up and maybe do a bit of damage to Rapha in this situation. Has to be careful though, still doesn't have a rail to work with.
Here comes the Pika. Vengeurr able to swiftly remove it from play. As we can see now, the heavy's the next course of action. And Rapha's just kind of zipping in and out and takes that away. He has elements of control right now. He has a way more stack to work with. He finally has all the weapons he wants to. But in Vengeurr's position, we've seen the strength of really talented Galena players. Just the totem can be so good for just sustain. And right here, Vengeurr creating somewhat of a blockade, just right in front. Getting that totem in the way, is it going to be enough to save his skin? There's a lot of damage, and it's a tricky position for Vengeurr. Back, not even to the wall, but to the out of bounds.
Almost looked like he was going to walk right off the edge there, but it is Rapha who managed to do most of the damage. I actually feel like Vengeurr kind of fumbled that situation because he had a very nice angle, as did Rapha right there, landing the railgun shot as he tries to make his way across. LG on LG, Vengeurr outstacked massively, will give up another frag. Rapha starting to run away with it. He's got a 4-1 lead. This is going to be difficult for the Italian.
And that was a favorable fight for Rapha anyway. Like, they're just straight up point-blank rockets, because he knows you've not got a rocket. You've just spawned their LG. What do I have to worry about? Again, rail and shotgun, who cares? Rockets all day, every day. Just knowing the limited resources you have access to. Again, knows the spawn. Rapha, all weekend long, he's been just preying on those spawns harder than anybody we've seen.
And that last frag, or the death rather, for Vengeurr, I feel like that's part of the mistakes that we were talking about, his flamboyant play. All he has the railgun, and yet he drops onto heavy. Even if you land 1 shot, 2 shots, Rapha is still going to be alive. And it doesn't matter at that point if you've got the upper advantage, he will just bounce you up with the rockets and finish you off instantly. That's a good burst of LG into the rail though. Again, Vengeurr with the combo kills. I feel like he's more and more making that like his trademark. These kinds of frags, you don't see them all the time from other players, but Vengeurr is making it work masterfully.
Oh!
Bye-bye, Rapha. Go sleep with the fishes, he says, as he knocks him right off the edge. Wonderful play coming out of Vengeurr.
And it's good that Vengeurr stopped him beforehand too, because Rapha, when they were both kind of semi-railable to each other, Rapha did kind of push forward to take the heavy. Even if he died there, you have to look at the HP Vengeurr didn't have in that situation. If Rapha denied the heavy and then died, the chance of a quick refrag was so fast.
Yeah.
Just wasn't able to establish it, and it was the access to it that Vengeurr had that he could really start something special. That was deletion though.
That was a mistake. That was a mistake. I started shaking my head the moment I saw Vengeurr for the rocket jump
That was
right there.
quite violently, the vigorous head shake. I saw it in my peripheral vision.
It was a very vigorous head shake. I was like, no, the moment he dropped down the turret, I was like, okay, he's gonna maybe set himself up down here, maintain the bottom position, but then he just rocket jumped straight into that LG, and Rapha, of course, you know, he knows how to work that shaft from time to time, and that hurts badly on the Italian.
We have to look at the 5-minute warning. It's been ticked off, half of this map left to go. Vengeurr may only have 5 minutes left in his upper bracket career for the Stage 2 finals. Rapha, loads of armor, and yeah, just keep him in that position. Try and set up a new angle perhaps, but at this stage, the next objective likely to be the heavy as it's about to spawn. But if Rapha can keep a gauge here, wait a minute, okay, that rail, very important, but Rapha, plenty of ways to restack back up. The one thing is, he has to disengage. It's given Vengeurr access to the heavy, and yeah, at this stage, the Mega too. That one rail, very costly for him.
Yeah, I think Vengeurr actually made a move and tried to read Rapha. I expected him to go for heavy instead to stack up there, but Rapha just went to banana. Those are some good rockets. Vengeurr still pushing into the choke point, taking such a risk by doing that, and now he gets the worst position. Rapha has the better situation right there to catch his opponent with the LG. Slowly managing to stack back up, 100 health, 50 armor, looking decent. Vengeurr got a small advantage, but still, the American looking pretty solid after what looked like an almost guaranteed death.
There's one thing that's constantly appearing here as well, and it's how ready Rapha is for Vengeurr's aggression.
Yeah.
These small bursts of aggression that would otherwise take a lot of people by surprise that you may not expect, Rapha manages to be ready for it. And even then, he's looking for potential totem angles just to shut down any chance Vengeurr might have. And either an overstack, oh, rocket jump damage into a Pika Kamikaze would have been a little bit more of a costly rocket jump than you would imagine, but Vengeurr's able to quickly deal with it. But it's time taken, and it doesn't look like a whole lot has happened in this time frame, and that's just bad news for Vengeurr. He's running out of time, only 3 frags to even things up here, and the fact that Rapha is already 2 maps up, it just spells disaster. Vengeurr, he needs to make something happen soon.
It also really doesn't look like the Galena pick is paying off, I feel like, right? The totems, he has never even come close to having 3 of them up at the same time. Can't get that overstack going. Rapha is just shutting them down and applying so much pressure that Vengeurr has to drop the totems to survive, which is something that isn't even working at all. So he can never get a setup going. Like, look, again, he has to drop the totem in the middle of the fight just to protect himself. And Rapha, beautiful use of the peeker, doesn't immediately go for the kamikaze, but just does some consistent long-distance damage.
And distance is the key word. Rapha is picking his distance in this fight so that the totem does 0. Like, I mean, Vengeurr puts it a little bit further forward, so he has to kind of go out of his way to heal up, but it doesn't really help him do more damage. Rapha has just been coming off better in these exchanges every single time. Does manage to get a rail, but it's swiftly returned. When Rapha is getting hit by Vengeurr, he is just repaying him in kind every single time. And here we go again. More damage coming through. That rail not going to do a whole lot with the amount of armor Rapha's looking at. And the damage in between the cooldown. This is just going from bad to worse. Hang on a minute. Pika does get taken down. Rapha can't risk punishing during the rail cooldown, though. He himself is 1 frag away. And the fact that it's 3 frags gets the rocket anyway. And now I am fearful, Flea. There's a couple of seconds and the Mega's going to get up. Rapha should realistically be able to take that if he wants to, but he wants to bully away from the heavy first. That was his plan.
It's exactly what you said earlier. Rapha is so ready for that aggression. Even when he's low himself, he just continues putting out that defensive damage like none other. And Vengeurr just unable to really do anything against it. This might be his last opportunity. Eats another bad rail. He's gonna chase. He knows 1 minute and 30 seconds for 4 frags. This is borderline impossible as it is. He just has to go plus forward. This is the make or break it. Rapha getting a little anxious right there. Yep, using the beaker, blowing itself up. But he still takes a rail in the back. Come on, Vengeurr, he's got some time to work with, but this is sketchy, especially when Rapha keeps doing stuff like that.
It just feels like the moment Vengeurr has an inch to do anything, it's not enough. Rapha just puts a lid on it almost immediately. And now we have 1 minute left for what is likely extremely to be the final map here between Rapha and Vengeurr. Vengeurr really gave it what he could, but Rapha has just been the more consistent player. It just feels like he's just playing better here. He's had the better aim. He's just had the more solid grasp on the situation that's going on. He's ready for every single advance Vengeurr has brought to the table. They're really, with the exception of that first map on Blood Covenant where we had that cheeky double jump into rail, that's the only time Rapha was ever surprised by Vengeurr at all.
I think one of the main things here was just the positional play. Rapha did it so well on this last map, putting himself out of harm's way. Every single time that Vengeurr landed a shot, a railgun shot that left him low, Rapha had an exit route, right? Vengeurr would hit him, Rapha would be down to 60 points of health or something like that, and then Rapha just managed to dip out of the room and stack up before Vengeurr could get sight of him again, and that is such incredible positional play that absolutely shut down Vengeurr's odds of making a comeback. Rapha still proving he's as great as ever as he moves ahead, I think, to the winner bracket finals.
He has given himself a display of phenomenal form all weekend long, and I will admit the 3-0 is not what I expected. I don't think it's what anyone expected, but you know Vengeurr's going to be disappointed with that. You know, it was always going to be unpredictable over who took this, but Rapha, how can you not feel good after a result like that?
Oh, of course. I mean, Rapha is absolutely pumped right now. He's kind of used to it, I assume, after winning so often at these big lands, but still, taking down an opponent like Vengeurr, that's unpredictable because he's got the aim and he almost managed to do it so often, right? You could very clearly tell when it came down to Rapha, he was completely taken by surprise when his opponent just launched into this quick LG to rail. But now we're going to move over back to Jackie, who's standing next to our winner.
Thank you, Flea. That's absolutely right. Rapha, a dominant performance. A 3-0 series. You've come in, you've absolutely smashed it. So the average viewer at home, this might have looked like it was a very easy feat. Did it feel that way playing it, or was it much harder than it looked?
I just think I was making very quick decisions, a little bit quicker than he's been used to for like other opponents. And so, you know, sometimes he would get, let's say, free shots against other people. I would kind of read like what he's trying to do, and so I would avoid it, and then I would get map control from that just because of, you know, paying attention in that manner. And yeah, I don't think he was ready for me to hit as well as I was hitting. I'm even surprised myself. Like I aimed really, really well, and yeah, chose a lot of really good fights for me.
Now, moving on from here, you're either going to be playing against Kilson or Razy, both hard opponents, but who would you prefer personally to face?
Honestly, there's no way to choose. They're both playing at probably their best shape right now, and they just have playstyle differences. So both of them, especially when it comes to best of 5, and then hopefully for myself, the grand finals with, what is it, best of 7. Our champ pools, all three of us, are so vast. It's really hard to ban anybody out, so you have to really be on your game. So either one that I would potentially face, it's going to be a really tough challenge.
Okay, well, congratulations on your victory here. Obviously, more to come in the tournament for you, Rapha, but for now, let's move back on over and see what's going on at the desk.
I love that wink. I love that wink.
I mean,
Rapha, he does it all the time. You gotta love it, right?
I mean, I'm just thinking about how amazing the matches that are coming up are going to be off the back of just how good everyone's looking at this point. Now, we touched on this before we loaded in to this series, is that a lot of the players that you kind of predict would win the stage 2 finals, with the exception of Cooler, as he was unfortunately eliminated yesterday. They're all here, and they're all in the upper side of the bracket. That kind of like comfort zone, that good feeling of just undefeatedness that Rapha is actually continuing. There was really, it just looked like he was unchallenged. I know Jackie touched on it, and that was personally actually a good question, was that to a lot of people this series would look very, very easy. Right. Against someone like Vengeurr, he's never easy.
No, not at all. I mean,
it's all about the small details.
Yeah, Vengeurr, we saw so many of these brief flashes of absolute brilliance, right? Time and time again, the combo kills. I don't think anyone's been doing anything like it. LG so quickly into rail to finish. Such confident plays from Vengeurr, making, like, look at that. Just for example, you can see them time and time again, taking Rapha by surprise. But then I feel like the overall level of play, he was just outshadowed by Rapha with superior control, better decision making, and Vengeurr Vengeurr just a little too inconsistent to rival that.
But all the Vengeurr fans out there, this is not where his tournament journey ends. We do have the lower bracket, which is being forever broadcasted on the B stream. That is live at Quake Champions 2, I believe, and that kind of just has the raw gameplay of some of the games that are going on in that lower side of the bracket. Vengeurr's journey will still continue, but I really hope that a defeat of this manner does not affect him too much, because he was visibly very disappointed.
Oh, of course, and I mean anyone would be, right? Vengeurr, we keep saying it, he's doing so well online, but still when it comes to LAN, I don't think he's even able to break into that top 4 at any major tournament. So time and time again, there's so many people hoping to see him finally break through. Maybe this is the one.
Well, here's my question to both of you, because as we said, asking Rapha here, obviously in a 3-0 fashion, you've really quite dominated, but I want to touch on Awoken, a map that's so incredibly versatile, obviously, for Vengeurr. He basically started writing sort of an essay on how to play the map, really, hasn't he, throughout his playstyle in the Quake Pro League. How is it so dominant for Rapha? How has he been able to come out here swinging right and take this in a 3-0? And is this Rapha's form looking like this could finally be a LAN victory for him?
Okay, so to answer your later question, if he plays like this throughout the rest of the tournament, there is every single chance that this could be his first Quake Pro League victory. Like, right. Absolutely. We've seen him play of this level before, and he has dominated tournaments, and it has looked like nobody can touch him. The first question, it kind of just looks almost like how prepared Rapha was consistently. How many times do we see, especially on Awoken, that Vengeurr has so many small little niche details of weird angles he can take, the kind of plays you might not expect, and he takes you by surprise, steals a frag away, and then the whole momentum just is shifted.
Yeah.
Every time there was even a shred that might have happened, we were looking at Rapha, his point of view for a lot of it. He was already ready for that. You'd hear a rocket jump, here comes Vengeurr, LG all the way, he's dead. It didn't work.
That's just one of the things that stood out the most, right? Just as you mentioned it yourself, Jackie, Vengeurr is the player who absolutely understands Awoken to perfection, but Rapha knows this, and he is constantly ready to take on these bursts of aggression. A rocket jump, he's waiting with the rail, right? You're gonna come around the corner, he's got a rocket planted right at you. So Vengeurr absolutely tried over and over again, but Rapha, and we know this, his positional play, his discipline is absolutely phenomenal, and Vengeurr just wasn't able to break through that.
Oh yeah. It's unfortunate for him, but let's delve deeper into the bracket and recap how things have gone so far. Because, of course, that is our first semi-final that has been concluded, but there's still more games to be played. Here's how things have been shaping up, though, with Rapha now moving forward with a 3-0 victory over Vengeurr, meaning Razy will take on Kilson to see who is going to be dueling against Rapha, Ryan.
I mean, look at these other matches, Chain versus Base, and I got to give another shout out to Chain for this rampage he's been on in the lower bracket. He now has to go up against Base, and if that's a victory, that's just another titan that he's been able to take down over the course of this weekend. Hron versus Saigiv, and Vengeurr lying in wait. I just think we're all in line for fantastic matches. I think we're all in for a treat. You guys at home, hopefully you've been enjoying the action so far, and there's plenty more where that came from.
Oh, there is. But before that, we need time to reset after the Rapha rampage. So let's calm it down a little bit. We'll be back in with more Quake Pro League action after the